Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today. I'm always excited about my guest, but that's because the coolest people come on the show, and I know you must enjoy them immensely too, because here you are. So this is Jessica Grace Vargas. Hey, Jessica.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted. So I'll just tell you a little bit about her. So she's the debut author of The Evolver. And it's a novel that she describes as young adult romantic science fiction. Now, I have to be honest, I'd not heard of this genre before. So I was really excited to have this conversation with you. And it says it's kind of Jane Austen meets George Lucas. That sounds cool, right? She was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, where she spent her summers in Mexico. And there she sometimes felt alien and out of place, and both are central themes in her novels. So that all sounds. So where are you living now?
I live in Sedona, Arizona now. Yeah.
Sedona. Okay. Yeah. So one of the things about your bio that really just caught my eye was that you say that you learned great storytelling when you were writing and performing sketch comedy.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I studied at Second City in Los Angeles, which Second City is a huge improv school, with a lot of like Saturday Night Live cast members come out of Second City and a lot of comedy people come out of Second City. It was a great experience because I really, first of all, the improv, I really learned how to fail because improv is has such a low success rate. But when you do good at improv, there's nothing better, and there's nothing worse than bad improv. But then I graduated to the sketch comedy writing program, and it was really great because I got to go perform and see in front of a live audience what worked and what didn't, and in real time. And then the next week I would go rewrite my parts of the show, which kind of drove my cast members crazy. I think I never changed anything structurally about the scene, but that was always fun for me to kind of see what audiences responded to and what they didn't. And I kind of drove myself crazy wondering why they they responded to what they responded to and why they didn't respond to the things I thought they would. So it just became a really good education. And I also kind of learned I have a some rhythm to my dialogue, I think, that comes directly from being in improv in Second City and performing on a stage, and also from watching way too many Nora Ephron movies way too many times. So, but it's
You
great
know,
education.
it's dialogue is so important to our writing. And so what I did is I studied playwriting
Mm.
because that helped me get dialogue. I wrote terrible plays, but my dialogue was so good. And that helped me with my novels. Yeah, we have to learn from all kinds of sources, right? So, but you decided not to pursue sketch comedy, stand-up comedy?
Um, I fell in love with the writing aspect of things. I lived in LA at the time, and it's just a really like tough industry, kind of dog eat dog world up there. And I just fell in love with story. And I think in order to kind of make all that other stuff happen, you need a lot of people. Whereas writing, you just need yourself and a piece of paper or a computer. So I just really fell in love with that aspect of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell us a little bit about the Evolver. What's the premise?
So the Evolver is about a 16-year-old girl named Kennedy Neff who was born with these sort of otherworldly powers that have kind of kept her in isolation. She can't really make a lot of friends because she's so different. And she always believed that she inherited these powers from her father, a man she's never met but is desperate to find. And so she really works on them, kind of thinking that, if she can get really good at them, that when she does meet him, he'll be impressed or whatever. But instead, she ends up getting really good at them and being accepted into the Evolver Institute, which is meant for, advanced minds, talented beings like her. So she travels to this paradise planet on the other side of the universe, believing the technology there will help her find her father, learning that he was actually from a different planet. And so there she makes friends with, her hilarious alien roommate. She falls in love with someone that she thinks is light years out of her league, all while kind of realizing that someone's sabotaging her efforts to find her father. And so she has to find out why and also not give up on her quest to ultimately find him, which she enlists her, help from her friends. And it ends up being kind of a, they fail a lot, before ultimately succeeding, hopefully.
I suspect there's a lot of humor in this book.
There is, yes, yeah.
Yes. It sounds like there would be adventure and humor. So did anything in particular inspire you to write this particular story?
Um, I think I hated high school. So I think I always had this fantasy in high school that somebody was gonna like come tap me on the shoulder and tell me there'd been some huge mistake and that I didn't belong there and that I actually was supposed to go on this huge adventure and I had a huge destiny or something. So I think that inspired it a little bit. But also just my fascination. I've always kind of been fascinated with aliens and I've always kind of told myself my own story about it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not somebody who's going to go to Area 51 and demand they let me in. Like, I just want to make up what I think is going on out there because it's more fun. So, those kind of two things coincided to inspire the story.
That sounds really cool. So, what girl is Kennedy? What are some of her conflicting traits and what do you love about her?
I love Kennedy because, first of all, she's sassy and she's funny and she's just kind of a spitfire in a lot of ways. She speaks truth to power, which I think is a really great quality in a you know. But she also has a lot of human insecurities too. She's pretty, she kind of grew up in her sister's shadow, so she kind of doubts herself, even though she's talented and she has so much to offer, she still is constantly wondering if she's enough. And I felt like, I don't know, that really gives me a way into her. I can't just write somebody who is absolutely sure of themselves 100% of the time. So,
And
uh,
what teenager is?
exactly.
You know, and
Yeah.
what I don't think people would believe you,
Well,
right?
she can also feel what other people are feeling. It's one of her more burdensome gifts that she has. So she is like an empath on steroids, so she it's kind of matured her quicker. So some of her angst, she it didn't stick around long because she's almost too smart or too wise. She's wise beyond her years because she's able to feel what people are feeling. So
Mm, that could be a burden.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So interviewers, I don't always ask this question, but I get asked it so many times that lately I've been asking authors about it. So people are curious about our writing process. How do we write? And some people are what as you and I know, are called pantsers,
Mhm.
who just, let the story take them wherever it's going, let their characters. And then there are the planners, the plotters, who really like write an outline. And then there's a mix, I think, of folks like if that's a continuum, there's all these folks in the middle. So where do you fall? What's your writing process like?
I'm definitely in the middle. Um, I think I always have an outline ready, but it's more of a compass than like a detailed instructions, like a set of detailed instructions, like, in 2.3 miles, you're going to turn right. Like for me, it's you're headed north. We're going to those mountains. We know what's going to, like, I always know the ending. So I know what's going to happen when I get there. So I start with knowing the ending. And then I just kind of, I leave a lot of room for inspiration because that's the best part about being a writer. That's where the magic comes in, is when you're kind of the pipeline of story ideas is coming from someplace you don't really know where, or that's the
Hmm.
best part for me. So I like to leave a lot of room open for that. And as far as my outline goes, I'm ready to get rid of it at any point, that I can kind of find what's going on in the story. So,
Yeah, I think there's an awful lot of people in the middle um, that you don't always know, though. My last novel, the one that's just coming out, Justice for Emerson, which is a murder mystery, and you're supposed to know the ending when
mm.
you're writing a murder mystery so that you don't screw up all the little clues and everything. And my husband said to me, I was three-quarters of the way through the book, and he said, Karen, like, who did it? I said, I don't know. The murderer has not revealed himself. I just don't know, like, I don't know what's going to happen, right?
I love
Are you
that though. That sounds fun. You know,
are you working on anything now?
I'm working on book 2 of the Evolver series, so it is a series, yeah. So it's called The Failsafe right now. That's the working title. I hope to have it out by the fall, but we'll see.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. So do you see it as a long series or is it a trilogy or kind of how are you envisioning it?
Right now it's 4 books in my head, but it might be 5. It just depends. So,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
that's exciting. I'm so happy for you. That sounds really, really good.
Thank you.
So this program is called What Are You Reading? What Are
Mm.
You Writing? And our audience is always interested in books that had a personal impact, that they influenced you. You mentioned Jane Austen meets, George Lucas. Um, was she a big influence on your writing, or was there someone else who was?
I don't think I'd be a writer without Jane Austen. When I was younger, I decided I was going to spend this entire summer reading the classics, and I didn't get past Jane Austen because I just became obsessed and had to read everything she ever wrote. And then I went to the Bronte sisters, but I just, I don't know, there's just a feeling around Jane Austen, and I'm like, oh, she's just so good. You
Yes.
and she shaped so much of storytelling without people even realizing it. But she wrote such strong women, nuanced women. Gosh, she just was able to include everything, the restraints of the time, the hopes and
Yeah.
aspirations of a woman. I love most, though, as a romantic person, I really love the longing in her books. I really loved, how much the characters long for each other and you know, how that during that time, going to London from the countryside, you'd be gone for a month, but even though it was only like 20 miles or whatever it was in a horse and carriage, it took forever. So it just felt like there was like moors and forests and like this distance between these two people who loved each other. And I don't know, I always thought that was so romantic. So I really love the longing in her books. And yeah, I could talk all day about
Yeah.
Jane
I'm a
Austen.
big fan as well. But sometimes I record standing in front of my other bookcase, and she's right on the top shelf.
Yeah.
Complete works of next to
Oh,
the
right here
complete
too.
work. Yes. But next to her is the complete works of William Shakespeare. I'm a Shakespeare nut.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, his stories are, they're filled with action, they're filled with love, they're filled with wickedness. There's just so much of the human condition,
Mhm.
and he had to perform. The plays had to be performed with men dressed as women, and somehow be believable to the audience. And the audience is all sitting in the pit eating their lunch, and if they don't like it, they would throw their food at the actors. So you really had to be on your game
Yeah,
when you I'm glad nobody does that to us. Nobody
I know.
throws
Yeah,
tomatoes at us. If you don't like our book, just put it aside. And
exactly.
and don't bother to write a review. That's mean.
Exactly. Don't
So,
trouble yourself. Just move on.
have you read anything recently that you could recommend to the audience?
I recently read a book called All the Colors of the Dark. I just finished it last week.
Hmm.
Actually, I got stuck on I had a 20-hour travel day. It was not supposed to be a 20-hour travel day, but I got redirected on a plane to Dallas. And anyway, I thank God for that book because I was so entranced by the book that I hardly even noticed what I was having to go through. But it is the most beautiful book. It starts in 1975 and it I think it ends in like the early 2000s, but it's just one of those sweeping
Hmm.
books where you're just like, oh my gosh. And the prose is incredible and the way he can capture life. And it's about a 13-year-old boy who sees a girl getting abducted and he steps in and he gets abducted instead. And he gets taken and it's just, oh, you have to, it's so good.
Wow, who's the author?
Chris Whitaker.
Chris Whitaker. All the Colors of the Dark. That's a great title.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful book.
That's a really great title. So now that you've gotten everybody falling in love with you and they just all want to read your book and they want to find out everything they possibly can about you, how can our audience find you?
My website is www.jessicagracevargas.com. I'm also on Instagram as Jessica Grace Vargas, and yeah, that's those are probably the two best places. And I'm going to be at the Tucson Festival of Books on March 16th. If anybody is in the Tucson area and wants to stop by, I'd love to meet you. And yeah,
Yeah. Unfortunately, this will be
oh,
aired, but
like,
yeah.
okay,
But
never mind.
so so
I won't
if
give
you
it time.
saw Jessica at the fair and now you're watching this, then you could let her know that
Okay,
you met her on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Have a great week, everybody, and I'll see you next time.
thank
Bye.
you.